Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back. This is Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and you're listening to the Networking RX podcast. I want to paint a picture for you. I want to follow this little narrative, and trust me, it all comes back to relationships and networking. If you've listened long enough, or if you know me well enough, you know that I have lots of stories, lots of analogies, lots of little metaphors. But imagine you're going to be taking a plane trip and you find out that the particular plane that you're going to be flying on, a particular model of plane that you're going to be flying cross country on, it doesn't matter, cross state, whatever. But 1 in 10 flights ends in a crash. There is no way on God's green earth you are getting on that plane. I wouldn't get on that plane. I wouldn't let my kids get on that plane. I wouldn't let my wife get on that plane. I would beg and plead, do not go on that plane. That is literally Russian roulette. 1 in 10 times that thing is going to come crashing down, and that's a horrible fate. So you wouldn't take that flight. 1 in 10. What if it were 1 in 100? 1 in 100 times that plane came crashing out of the sky. Something happened on the landing. Something happened mid-flight. 1 in 100 times. Would you take the flight? Chances are you probably wouldn't, because the cost of being that 1 in 100 would, you wouldn't take the flight. Even if the flight were free, you wouldn't take the flight. What about 1 in 1,000? 1 in 1,000 chance that flight's going to go down. Now, you don't know which is that 1 in 1,000. It doesn't mean every 1,000th flight. It just means one time out of every 100 flights, on average, or 1,000 flights at this point, on average, that plane is going down. And the answer is you wouldn't take that flight. 1 in a million, you wouldn't take that flight. And that's just human nature. We're hardwired to kind of be, to self-preserve, to protect ourselves. And so we look at risks. We look at risk a whole lot differently than we look at reward. But the point I'm trying to make with respect to this is that this particular episode is going to be on reliability. And reliability goes to the heart of trust. And to be known, liked, or be successful in networking, you need to be known, liked, and trusted. And that trust is so key. And there's a lot that goes into trust, but one of the biggest elements I feel with respect to trust is reliability. And the reason I use the metaphor of the airline, and that you wouldn't, or the airplane, I should say, a particular model of airplane, you wouldn't take the flight because 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 or ultimately 1 in 1,000, the plane is not reliable. It's just not reliable to get you there. 1 in a million, it's not reliable. And one of the things I often hear with respect to reliability as it applies to trust, you're either 100% reliable or you're not. And that's where this airplane analogy comes in. If 1 in a million times that plane goes down, or 1 in 1,000, and I realize the odds are 1,000 times more, going from 1 in a million to 1 in 1,000. But that you don't know if that one time is the time. And so because it's just a little bit unreliable, it's 100% reliable. And so let's apply the same notion to just building trust with our network. If you're 90% reliable, you're really not reliable, because people don't know when that 10% is going to rear its head. And so ultimately, you're you're viewed as unreliable. And I guess it depends upon what people are relying on you about, and we can have all sorts of arguments about that. Sometimes it really doesn't matter, but a lot of times within networking, it really matters. It really matters. I'm going to drive across town to have lunch with somebody. I need them to be reliable. I need them to be there because it's my time, and I can't get that time back. And if one time out of 10 they just do a no-show, I'm going to be leery about the next time I go cross town to meet them for lunch. Is it going to be a no-show? And I've had people who have stood me up on calls, and I'm not inclined to have another call. And they might have a great excuse. And it depends upon how well I know the person, and the situation and circumstances. And, you know, I'm not inclined to have a second call, but I may. It might be a situation, and I've had this before, where somebody they don't make the call for whatever reason, and they contact me immediately as soon as they realize that they've failed, and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this happened," and I might give them another chance. But when I'm sitting on the phone or waiting on Zoom that second go around, there's a little voice in my head that's saying, "Yeah, they might not be here. They might not be here." And to my, I guess, fortunately, pleasantly, most people do. Most people are fine. But I have been stood up twice by the same person. I'm not going for a third time. I'm just not. And it's only a Zoom call. It's not like I've driven across town and waited at a restaurant for somebody. So I'm not out a whole lot, but I am out that particular. I could have scheduled somebody else to talk to. You only have so many time slots in over the course of a week, and I could have talked to somebody else. Likewise, when somebody cancels last minute, it's kind of the same thing. It's like you can't really fill that time. You can work. Obviously, if you're driving across town, it's a little more hurtful than if it's just a Zoom call that doesn't happen. But the point is that ability without dependability really has no value. It really has no value. And you need to stop and think about that as you're building relationships out there. You can be the smartest person in the room. You can be the hardest working person in the room. And it all really has no value unless you're reliable. I mean, stop and think about it in terms of numbers. We were taught as kids is that, in mathematics, 0 times any number equals 0. 0 times infinity equals 0. 0 times 1 equals 0. Anything times 0 equals 0. And it's the same thing in life. You can excel in any aspect of your life, but it becomes meaningless if you're not reliable. And you need to be reliable 100% of the time. And that's just really what it comes down to. And so you need to carefully focus on the things you commit to other people, and making sure that you can follow through, because if for some reason you can't follow through, that really puts a chink in the armor relative to your reliability, and with that, it impairs your trust. It impairs people's ability to trust you, and that can be really hurtful. It's one thing not to be known, and it's certainly one thing not to be liked. Or not everyone's going to like you, but if somebody knows you and likes you, and then can't trust you because of aspects relative to reliability, that's really hurtful. I mean, if you stop and think about it, reliability is 100% in your control. It's 100% in your control. You can control whether you commit to things or don't commit to things. That's the first thing. If you don't feel like you can follow through on something, you can't be somewhere, you can't do whatever you're committing to, then don't commit to it. Don't have somebody rely on you. They're better off to do it themselves or find another option if you can't commit to it. So it's really in your control. Now, whether you're reliable or not reliable is 100% in your control, but that's not to say that things don't intervene that can impact that. Things happen. You might commit to somebody to being at a lunch. You might commit to a presentation, and things intervene. There are family emergencies. Driving to something, you might have car trouble, and those are understandable. But you relieve yourself of some of the taint of unreliability if you, as soon as possible, let the other person know. So as soon as you know, hey, listen, I'm under the weather. I am really sick. I want to let you know as soon as possible. Letting someone know after the fact or 2 minutes before, as soon as you know that there's an issue that you are not going to be there, you need to let them know. You need to let them know. You need to give them forewarning. First of all, you need to establish yourself as being reliable. Obviously, if somebody the very first time we're getting together, they're a no-show to a Zoom call or to a meeting, they don't have that previous standing. But if it's somebody who is continually reliable and something comes up, I give them the benefit of the doubt. If it's the first time, you don't get the benefit of the doubt. And that's why that first meeting, those first encounters are so important. But as soon as you know that you might not be able to follow through, you need to provide some sort of forewarning. As soon as you know, if it's 3 days before, let somebody know so they can plan otherwise. And then the other thing, you need to ensure that they know that whatever has kept you from being reliable is uncommon. It's not something that's going to always rear its head. I once had somebody who missed a call, and it was something with their dog. It was, not my dog ate my homework, but pretty close. But it was almost something like, well, that can happen all the time. Hey, my mom called and I wanted to talk to my mom. It's like, okay, I get it. Your mom's important. I totally get it. I'm not saying I'm more important than your mother, but if you're committing to a call to me and you're saying anytime my mom wants to call to talk, I don't know when that is. Granted your mother is more important, but that just makes the whole situation unreliable, and I don't want to commit to this. I don't want to commit my time. And actually, this particular person, it happened twice. So we need to have this attitude that we are 100% reliable. It's all or nothing. We're reliable all the time, or you're not. And unfortunately, reliability doesn't build it the same way it deteriorates. One unreliable action or inaction, I guess, as well, does more harm than being reliable. It's just kind of like it's kind of like an egg, right? I mean, once that egg breaks, it's hard to put it back together. We're not going to roll into Humpty Dumpty here. But you need to focus on trying to be reliable. If you tell someone you're going to meet them at 5 o'clock, arrive at 4:50, so you leave no doubt as to your presence. I try to do that. It doesn't always work, but I try to be places as soon as I can. If you tell somebody you're going to call, you're going to be on a Zoom call, then be there. And if you commit to doing something, then meet the deadline, beat the deadline. I'll get that to you by Friday. Well, you know what? Here it is Thursday. I've gotten it to you. Not Saturday, not Sunday with excuses. And if you find out that I'm not going to be able to get it done by Friday, let them know as soon as possible, because you don't know who's relying on them. So again, relationships is all about knowing people, getting people to know you, like you, and trust you. And a key component of that trusting is being reliable. And you're either 100% reliable or you're really unreliable. So that needs to be something you continually focus on, continually try and improve upon. It's funny, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were, I'll tell you, it was Tom Anderson, one of the directors in AmSpirit Business Connections, and he said, I found myself driving, speeding, going down the road to get to a meeting to be there on time. And if you're late to an AmSpirit meeting, you kick in $1 to the bucket. And he's like, I'm literally breaking the law, going to get a $150 speeding ticket to avoid being late. And while that's funny, what it underscores is that being on time and being reliable is just paramount importance to Tom Anderson. And that's why he's got a great network, is because he focuses in on these sorts of things. I just thought that was kind of an interesting story, but it goes right to the heart of this whole topic of being reliable, and he just wants to be reliable in all situations. Speaking about directors and AmSpirit Business Connections, that's just our fancy word for franchisee. If you know of somebody who would like to be part of our team, helping expand AmSpirit Business Connections across the country, connect them to me. Email them, copy me. That would be great. I would certainly appreciate that opportunity to talk to them. It's a wonderful opportunity to add on to what someone is already doing with respect to their business or their profession. All of my franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, they're working the AmSpirit program. The rest of the time, they are doing, well, like Tom Anderson, he's a web designer. Dean Curry, he's a merchant services consultant. Gina Winterstein does telecommunications consulting, and this all just kind of dovetails into the things that, suffice it to say, it's a great opportunity for someone to add on to what they're already doing. Just email them and copy me on the email. That would be great.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.